If we're honest, we're all a little fearful to let people know how we really feel and think. And many of us have good reason for it. Some of us fear being misunderstood, others fear damaging a relationship or even feeling rejection. And if you're anything like me, you just don't want to feel vulnerable. I get it. But one thing I know is when we don't have honest spaces to share, we run from each other instead of towards each other, and we don't grow. And we all want to grow, right? We need safe spaces to process tough and awkward conversations, to push through our fears, discomfort, and apathy. And when we do this, we not only are better people for it, but we also create positive change. Friends, my name is Trevor Jenkins, and I am the founder of Unfiltered Conversations, which is an experience and a framework that guides people through discussing sensitive topics. And this podcast is a continuation of those topics. And as the founder, my desire is to answer thought-provoking questions by sharing real-life stories. And my hope is that you will engage these questions and share your own stories as well. But most importantly, that you will create positive change. Welcome to the Unfiltered Conversations Podcast. Why I didn't vote in the 2008 presidential election. It was the fall of that year. I was a junior in college at Middle Tennessee State University. And like many of my classmates, I had camped in the computer lab writing a lengthy paper for my business class due the next day. I still can feel the anxiety of having writer's block for hours. That same cold fall night also happened to be one of the most historic nights. It was the night that the 44th President of the United States would be selected. The presidential candidates were Vietnam War hero and Republican Senator John McCain, and his opponent, a biracial senator from the south side of Chicago named Barack Obama. I had followed the campaign of both candidates. I respected Senator McCain because he was a Vietnam veteran and my father served in Vietnam, while at the same time, I was not only in shock that I could possibly be a part of the generation that witnessed the first African American president, but I also was truly inspired by Barack's speeches and his plea for unity. Those famous words he spoke at the Democratic National Convention back in 2004. He said, "There's not a liberal America or conservative America. There's the United States of America. There's not a white America or black America. There's the United States of America." And as time went on, I too became excited by his mantra for change. I realized I wanted to vote for Senator Obama. I was moved by him and his vision for the country. There was only one dilemma though. Senator Obama was pro-choice, and every evangelical pastor, friend, and influencer I was surrounded by was conservative. I personally was pro-life, but I didn't think less of Senator Obama for being pro-choice. For months and months before the election, all I heard from my Christian conservative friends was that voting for Obama was an attack on our fundamentals that God had desired for us, and most of all, an attack against the church and our religious freedom. I recall a girl saying Obama was the Antichrist, something I'm sure she heard from her parents or even pastor. Another would say, "I don't know how people can vote for a baby killer," though I believe Obama stated that he was pro-choice, not pro-abortion. Was there a difference? So this became my internal dilemma. And what an internal dilemma to bear. Was I less of a Christian because I wanted to vote for someone who was pro-choice? And if I voted for Obama, was I really putting the church in harm? I didn't know what to do, and I felt ashamed to tell my Christian community who I wanted to vote for. And though my faith was really important to me, my fear of shame seemed to be stronger. And because of this, I didn't vote. Some students rushed into the computer lab to announce Senator Barack Obama would be the 44th President of the United States. The computer lab full of students erupted with both celebration and frustration. But I remained neutral. Yet in my hearts of hearts, I was overwhelmingly excited for him. However, I knew I could not truly be a part of this historical moment because of my fear of shame convinced me not to vote. Hey friends, I want to welcome you to the Unfiltered Conversations Podcast. Again, my name is Trevor Jenkins, and I want to thank you for tuning in as we're talking about vote shaming. Now, I want to be clear. I'm not trying to convert or sway anyone to a particular political party. That is not my objective. I just think it's safe to say there are many people who feel like I once felt, and sometimes still feel. Your faith plays an important role in your decision making, and yet you may not be a one-issue voter. But you struggle with voter shame and don't want other Christians to think differently of you because you're voting against something that is in their mind biblical and deserves urgency. Have you ever felt this way? And if you have, I want you to know that you are not alone. You know, every election and midterm, there are Christians on both sides of the party lines are made to feel less than Christian for voting for or against a policy or platform. I call this voter shaming. You know what shame says? Shame says there's something inherently wrong with you because you are not like us. And we often communicate this when people vote differently than we do. Not only do we make people feel like they are wrong, but we also make people feel like they're inherently evil because they are wrong and not like us. Shame divides us. So to avoid shame, we learn how to hide, reject, and minimize how we really feel about things. And this is exactly what I did during the 2008 election. I didn't want to feel rejected by my peers, and I didn't want to lose control of how people saw me, so I hid my decision and how I felt to myself. You know, one of the surprising phenomenons of the 2016 presidential election was this huge sector of people called the silent majority. This group of people rarely expressed backing President Trump's campaign, but they showed up election day, surprising most pollsters across the country. And one of the reasons why I think President Trump was so effective at appealing to the silent majority was because of his boldness not to hide, minimize, or reject how he felt about the state of America, causing the silent majority to no longer minimize, reject, and hide how they felt too. And even though every person who voted for him didn't necessarily approve of his methodologies, or even his policies, many people felt like their feelings were validated. Now, why was there a silent majority? One theory is that people felt like they couldn't align themselves with Trump's campaign and the controversial language and baggage he brought with him. If they had sided with Trump, they may have been shamed by their peers. So ultimately, it was safer to remain silent and just speak with their votes. You know, after this election, the polarization of our country was evident. There's always difference of opinion and heated political debate, but this election felt a little different. What can the church learn from this? Well, I think there's not only polarization in our society, but there's also polarization in the church. And one of the reasons why the Big C church is so divided is because we keep shaming each other instead of giving people an opportunity to voice how they feel, to wrestle in a healthy way with questions about faith, doctrine, and culture. I also believe there is a silent majority within the church, and many of them are speaking up by leaving because the church is polarized. Evangelicals think mainstream Christians are losing their moral compass by redefining Christian principles. Mainstream Christians think evangelicals are legalistic and intolerant of others who think differently than them. And with all of this, the enemy has really turned Christians against Christians and has given the world a ringside seat to watch this fight. But the reality is this: we need each other. And God has intended it to be this way. He has made us both gifted and limited. And because of this, we can't truly understand God or our gifting apart from Him and a diverse community of people. I once heard a pastor say, if two people think alike, then one of them is not necessary. Pretty clever, right? And essentially, he's saying that difference actually makes us better. You see, the Bible is general enough to have Christians in both parties. And we need Christians in both parties because there are holes in every political party, in every political system that the gospel speaks to. The gospel questions every culture and system to its roots. And as Christians, we should too. We need Christians in the Democratic Party, Christians in the Libertarian Party, Christians in the Republican Party, Christians as independents, so we can display to the world how it looks to work together despite of our differences. Why? Because unity is essential to the Christian faith. When people are not willing to go across party lines, Christians should be the first willing to go across party lines because, again, unity is important to our faith. So where do we go from here? Well, if you're going to engage in politics, here are 3 ways you can avoid vote shaming. The first one is this. Again, as Christians, we must remember that unity in Christ is the epicenter of our faith. We are not opponents. We are brothers and sisters who believe in the same Creator and Savior. That your political party is neither God or Satan. It's just a political party. Our faith does not rest on the backs of donkeys or elephants, and we must make every effort to keep this bond of peace or this unity as Paul refers to in Ephesians 4:3. Secondly, as Christians, we must approach political conversations with great humility. That the world should see us humbly disagree with each other, not shame each other. And when we look down on people who politically see things different than us, we ultimately say, I got this whole thing figured out, which is pride. And pride happens when we think more of ourselves or less of ourselves than God has intended us to. Pride is always about self, not others. So we must remember we are limited people who often find ourselves passionate about 1 or 2 issues more than others. But God is not a one-issue voter, neither is he American. He's bigger than us, and he cares about all the issues that may not be the focal point of our political parties. So again, we need to engage this conversation with great humility. Third and finally, pastors and Christian leaders, we need to continue to speak highly of people who may vote or think differently than ourselves because our people are watching. We need to set an example. And there's no better example I can think of than like when Senator John McCain displayed during a town hall meeting back in 2008. There was an elderly woman who made a racist remark against his political opponent, Senator Barack Obama. And when the elderly woman was given the microphone to ask a question, instead she made a racially charged comment calling Barack Obama an Arab who she could not trust. And in response, Senator John McCain said this to her. No, ma'am. He is a decent man, a family man, and a citizen who I happen to have some disagreements with. Oh, how more unified the church and our country would be if we chose to see the good in the people we disagree with instead of shaming them for not being like us. Friends, I want to thank you for listening to the Unfiltered Conversations Podcast. We truly appreciate you listening in and supporting us. And if you love this episode, head over to iTunes to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. Until next time, let's keep the conversation going.